Hey everyone. Guess you give it a couple more minutes here. Seems like comments are not wanting to show up for me very well here on my iPad or on the stream. Let's say thank you, Facebook. Hey everyone. Guess you give it a couple more minutes here. Let's turn my phone down. Seems like Jesus. 1 minute. All right, so we got about 30 folks in here, so I'll go ahead and try and get started. So things we're going to go over today, just like I tried to do before, but it went horribly. I forgot to switch some stuff and whatnot, so we'll just start from the scratch again. If you want to follow along when we get to doing some of the stuff with the console, you can use the PC suite either in version 11.4 or even earlier, or version 13, which is what I'm going to be using today, but there's be nothing different in between the versions for patching from the older versions than this one. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Let me know if you guys have any questions as we go. I'll try to catch them, but unfortunately, like I said, the Facebook stream's not showing me all the questions every time. I don't understand why, but we'll move on and figure that out later. So the first thing we go over today is the console layout. I'm basically going to be using the Tiger Touch in my slides here, and we'll also show some of it on the Titan 1 screen, so you guys can follow along with that if you're a Titan 1 user. But so let's go ahead and get started on that. So the first thing to talk about will be the soft keys. These are just keys that are down the side of the screen, either on the Titan mobile, on the Titan 1 interface, or on any of the consoles. You can either the hard buttons or the touchscreen buttons. These change with menu selection. So anytime we're in a different menu, I would look up here to see if you have any of your if the menu's changed, i.e., if we've got if we're in the patch menu, then you'll see different stuff up there. So always when you go in your first menu, take a look at your soft keys and see if you see something's changed. When it says edit times, that means you're in the top level of the menu. You're backed all the way out of any menus you may be in. Next, we have the wheels. This is used to change attributes. The keys next one can be used for quick menu access for items such as freeze. They do have adjustable sensitivity in the user settings, which we'll get to at one of these classes. Also, if you hold down the AVO key while turning the wheels, they go super speed. A nice way to have things handled quickly. If we take a look at our Titan 1 interface, the wheels are obviously going to be down here in this area here. Next we have is the attribute bank. Here we can select our attributes of control. We can find the moving light menu button here, or ML menu. The latch menu and the fan buttons are all in this area. On the Titan 1 interface, that's going to be all through down here, where we can find the IPCG, B, E, S. I is obviously intensity, position, color, gobo, beam, effect, special, and FX would be shapes. And your fan keys and what that are going to be down here towards the bottom. Next area we have is called the functions buttons. Here's where we control functions of the software. You can find the system menu here. The release and patch buttons are all in this area. To get the system menu on most of the on all the consoles, it's going to be press the AVO key and disk at the same time. On the Titan 1 interface, is going to be the button that says system on it, so you don't have to do AVO and disk to get to it. You may notice on the consoles that anywhere you'll see usually some different colored text and an up arrow, that means you get to that particular menu using the Avo key or Shift key to see what those show. So that's a good way so you can know that what those keys are going to do. Next section we have is the keypad. This is where we type in syntax and numbers. We find the Avo key in this area, the clear key, the fixture, palette, and macro and group hard keys. You can use 3 and with copy, move, and delete. That was new. That came up new in version 11, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly right now. But you can do 1 through 5 delete, 1 through 5 copy, 1 through 5 move, stuff like that using syntax if you're a syntax typer type person. Down at the bottom, we have the cue list control sections. You use control cue lists and chases. You find the go key here, the stop key, and the connect/cue key. On some consoles, it's labeled cue, some it's labeled connect, some it's labeled both. Like if we go and look at our Titan 1 interface here, down here in the bottom, you'll have all those keys, and you have it says cue instead of connect/cue. It's the same key, just labeled differently. Next, we have is called the window control section. Use control windows. If you use Avo and size, so the size/position button, you can move your stuff to an external screen. Avo plus min max switches which window you have control. You're taking control of. You find the open and close window keys here, or open/view. On some consoles, it's labeled open. Some is labeled view. Some is labeled open/view. If we look at our Titan 1 interface, we can see here that it's labeled view. It's also when we go into, if you wanted to delete a workspace, you enter in the menu there with the open/view key, and then you can delete that workspace. We'll get more into that later, but just one thing to keep in the back of your head next time you're at a console. Next we have is the highlight control section. It controls the highlight function. You find the fixture plus and minus keys here. The all key and the locate key are all in this area. The all key is another one where you get some consoles it's labeled odd even, some it's labeled all, some it's labeled odd even all, like the Tiger Touch 2 here is in this picture. But if we go to our T1 interface, we'll see that it's labeled odd even on here. And we also have the mystery button that doesn't do anything currently. Maybe someday it will. Above that, on the Tiger Touch 2, we're going to have our statics, our static playbacks. You record playbacks, workspaces, and macros up to these areas. If the workspaces, executor, macros, and executor buttons down here at the bottom, the blue buttons by themselves, those are considered touch keys and key profiles. Nothing just keep in the back of your head. If you're using a Tiger Touch 2 like this, these pages on these static plays pages can be changed with a macro. Down on the bottom left-hand side of the console, we've got the. Actually, I'm sorry, I didn't go over that section. Well, that section isn't in the Tiger Touch, so that's why we're not going to find it there. We got the playbacks function or section. This is where we save cues, cue lists, and chases, and the keys are configurable on our Titan interface. That's of course going to be all of our faders down here. Next, I want to talk about on screen is the context menu. Controls functions for Windows. It's going to change based on windows that are selected. In this case, in the picture on screen here, I've got it on the Capture Visualizer settings window, so we can see that some of the functions we can control through the context menu on there. Now, on the Titan 1 Titan Go interface and the Sapphire Touch, it's going to be this 4 lines button here to get to that same context menu. So instead of having it on the screen located about here, it's here on the 4 lines button for every different window. Next we have is what's called the prompt area. This is where you find the undo list, the text entry for search. Just about anytime you can enter text to search something, you'll find it box here, as well as the list for your undo. Of course, that is still the same on the same place on the Titan 1 interface right here. Down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, we've got the attribute display area. Down here is going to show what's in your programmer. If it's blue like it is here with the cyan, magenta, and yellow, that lets you know that the cyan, magenta, and yellow attributes are actually in the programmer by turning the light blue like this. If you tap above or below where it says, in this case, cyan, magenta, or yellow, you can have it do what's called a nudge. So you can take it straight to 100% or straight to 0%. If it was like it was a gobo wheel, you have it take it, gobo 1, gobo 2, gobo 3, and back down. Or if it was like pan and tilt, it would take it from, say you're at 50% and you tap down, it would take it to 0%. When you tapped up again, it would take it back to 50%. Then you tapped it again, it would take it to 100%. Or if you were somewhere in between 150 or 50 and 100, it would take it to 50 or 100, depending on which direction you go, or 0. It's here at the end. We've got the little blue arrow at the end of the order of wheels. So that means there's a second layer of attributes for color. Like in this case, I think the fixture I made this slide with was a BMFL. So it's obviously got the cyan, magenta, and yellow plus CTO and the color wheels. So if you see that little blue arrow there, you know that it's added in another set of wheels. And of course, on our T1 interface, that's going to be all that down here. It's still the same to show all the same show for all. It will show the same on that interface as it does as the picture we were just looking at. So quick navigation tips. Exit will take you back a step in the menu. Avoflex exit will take you all the way back to the top menu. So instead of having to hit exit 5 times, you can just press Avo and then exit and take you straight back to the top level of your menu. Quick way to get back out of things. Avo and disk, and then you can use your wheels to adjust desk lamp and screen brightness. Screen brightness is only available on some consoles. Clear will remove all information from the programmer. Talk about some workspace basics. Actually, before we get into that, if it wants to play nice for me, anyone have any questions to this point? Say hello, Manny. Hi, Sam. Hey, Dave Johnson. Nice to see you. Good day again. Hopefully, it's going to stay working this time. Hey, Randy, Damien, and all the others. There's so many of you that I'm almost lost. Oh, we got the famous Mr. Cully is with us today. So let's continue on to Workspace Basics, since there doesn't seem to be any any questions coming up at least yet. So what I'm talking about here is the ones the console puts in by default when you start a new show file. The first one you start is groups and palettes. I call this the basic 4. It's a good place to start for programming and busking. You've got your groups window, your colors, your position palettes, and your gobos and beam palettes. It's a good place for doing a lot of things. Next, you've got the fixtures and groups. It's good for making group layouts and fixture orders. You've got the effect editor, used for pixel mapper and keyframe shapes. And you've got the attribute editor, set attributes for fixtures, has a color picker and more, which we'll get into. Probably not today, but we will get into it. You also have some other default ones that I don't have slides for yet because I've forgot to go through and make them, to be honest. You also have one for your synergy settings and your synergy fixtures that will auto default in if you have version 13 or version 12 plus. But let's talk about our window size. So if you notice on any window in Titan, there's this little gear looking icon. This is to adjust our window size. We can set the text and button size as well as set columns and rows. So if we wanted to have our window have exactly 10 wide and exactly 10 tall, we can set it to be that instead of dynamic. And actually here we can show that on our T1 interface. So let's go to a better window than this one for that. Let's select this gobos and beams and we'll make it full screen. And we can see that I in this one have it's set to be a certain amount of rows and columns, so that no matter how big or small I make the window, it's going to be 5 wide and 6 tall. Or actually, excuse me, 5 tall, 6 wide. I always get that backwards in my head for some reason. And I also can set the text size to be different I want, but if I wanted to say, we'll change our rows to 12, we can see that it puts all that in, it puts blank space on it. No matter how big I make this window, it's going to have the same amount of buttons each any which way. You can even set it as something as silly as a 1x1. Say you've got a house of worship or a nightclub where they can't seem to figure out which button to push to basically just turn on the house lights or the basic stage wash. You can set it to 1x1 and then label this, instead of being a gobo, maybe label it a playback and have it be just say touch me, and they can figure out which button they're supposed to put by just, I think I'll click that one. And we'll set that back to what it was supposed to be, which was 6 by, oh, excuse me, 5x6. And see that it goes back to how it was. If we go back to our slides now, next one has got the window grid size. It allows you to set window size and position. Is fully customizable. Allows you to get more windows per workspace. So we'll show that here on our Titan one also. So if I click a Windows grid size, you can see this grid pops up. I can now drag the window around to resize it however size I want it to be. This has on by default, it has it turned on. See here we've got on our soft keys, okay, edit all windows off or on. You also got resize neighbors on or off. With resize neighbors on, you'll notice that when I drag the window around, it resizes the neighbor windows. If I do that again and turn it off, we'll see that it doesn't resize any of the other windows. It just redrags around the one we currently have. Some workspace hints. Use search. When in the workspace Windows menu, you can use search to find windows faster. Note this list is in alphabetical order. Let's actually see that real quick over here on our Titan 1 interface. So if we were to click the Open Workspace Windows button, we can see a list of all the workspaces that are available in Titan. I can see that this list is in alphabetical order. So if, say, I was looking for the Show library window, I could just click until I find the S's, then I could find Show Library. Or I'll just press exit to show it more clearly. If I did Open Workspace window and then wanted to find the, oh golly, what's a good one? We'll go to my colors. Say I wanted to find my fixtures window, since I don't have that open right now. I can just start typing in fix, and you'll see that it narrows it down to fixtures for me. And then I can find that in window easier and just click on it there to open it. Now, one thing to remember is when you do that, it remembers what you typed last. So when you see here, when I go back into the window again, it's not that it's or back into the menu again. You can see that it's not broken. It still just has the FIX in there. I'll try to find it. So if I just delete that out, and then brings up all of the windows again. Hope that makes sense and helps somebody out at some point in time. We can also, if we can't find a window or it doesn't appear to be opening, if you don't have an external display connected, make sure that the window you're trying to open is not trying to appear on a disconnected display. Go to the system menu, Avolites plus this on the consoles and the external display. So I'll just show that here. So say that we had, let me switch back over. Say that we were trying to find our capture window and it wasn't appearing, even though I kept clicking on here to open it. I would want to go into my system menu and then find display setup and set my external display to disconnected instead of connected. If it says connected, it might be trying to open on a screen you no longer have hooked up to your console and can be confusing sometimes. So make sure to go back in there and check that it's set back disconnected if you can't find a window. If a window gets too small to edit, sometimes when you're using the grid size, you can use the min-max key in the key control section to restore its size. I believe it's F4 on the Titan 1 interface to do the same, but I can show you guys an example of what I mean here. So if we were to take this window and drag it small, sometimes you can get it like this on accident and not be able to hit these buttons at all to resize it. This one we can. But we could use our min-max button in the window control section of the console to do it. I believe on here it's F4. Yes, F4 would get you to resize it. So any questions up to this point? Since I don't seem to have any questions, we'll, at least none that are showing. If there are asking questions and I'm not getting them, I apologize. Hopefully maybe Sam is there and can help out, or let me know if it's just that nobody's asking anything. So one of the first things start about we get a new console. You want to start a new show. So first we do is we'll go to disk and the new show, and we'll name the show. So we'll show that here on our Titan 1 here. So if we hit the disk button, and for our soft keys, we can choose new show. And we go ahead and give our show a name. I'm just going to name it My Great Show. And then I can hit OK and start that. Cancel. I didn't mean to start a new show. And I've also got the wipe DMX settings off or on. With wipe DMX settings on, it's going to reset your settings back to defaults, which is going to be your outputs A through D or H, depending on what kind of console you have, to lines 1 through 8 or whatever you have there. If you have a large say you've got a large install and you got a lot of ArtNet nodes and all that, you might want to leave your wipe DMX settings off so you don't have to spend all that time going back and redoing all your ArtNet settings for it. But we'll go ahead and just turn it on for this one, and we'll go ahead and hit OK. And we can see that we now have a clean show file. So one of the first things I like to do after I start a new show file is go in and check all of my DMX settings to assign my ArtNet nodes if I need to, or to check my outputs to make sure they're what I need them to be. So if we go into System and then DMX settings, we'll see here we've got all of our settings here. I have 4 outputs on this Titan Go because I actually have a Titan Mobile plugged in, just so I have faders that I can manipulate easily while teaching class here. But I'll show you if we had unassigned everything. If you click this little X here and click it a second time, we can see that unassigned all lines, so I have nothing assigned to any DM out, so I have no outputs happening right now. So if I wanted to, if I needed to assign streaming ACN lines and say I wanted to say, I can click where it says streaming ACN universe 1. I set what universe I want it to be. Auto is just going to start from the first one that's not assigned. And I can set my quantity. In this case, we'll go and set our quantity to 16. So after I set my quantity and the universe start that I want it to be, I just click on line 1, and we'll see it just that easy. I've assigned 16 lines of streaming ACN. ArtNet's going to be pretty much the same way. If I want to assign broadcast lines, I simply click on broadcast 0, set the universe I want to start on and the quantity, and then again, just can click on line 1 to start it at. And we'll see now that I have broadcast universe 0, ArtNet, and streaming ACN universe 1 both assigned to line 1. So anything I had patched, those would come out on both of those addresses, or both of those protocols, sorry. We also here we have where it says DMX output on version 12 and plus is labeled DMX output. On older console or older software versions, it's going to be labeled expert DMX. But here we can see the ports on the side of my mobile of A, B, C, and D. If I wanted to assign port A to line 1, I simply click on it and then click on line 1, and I now have port A. I have anything I have patched line 1 is coming out on port A, as well as the streaming ACN and ArtNet that we've already assigned. If I needed to, if I wanted to say that I need a line that comes out of front of house and goes to the left and right of front of house immediately, and I forgot the splitter back at the shop, or it's all the way in the back of the house and I don't feel like walking that far to get it, I can simply click on line on output B, and then click on line 1, and now have DMX coming out on, I have line 1 coming out on port A and B. So instead of having to go back there and get it, I can just have it there all right away. Also, I could assign all of these lines if I wanted to line 1 and turn my console into a really expensive DMX splitter. Have four lines of line 1 coming out of the front of the house. I don't know why you'd ever want to do that, but you could if you needed to. So next thing we'll talk about is the DMX overview. If we click the tab here where it says DMX overview, here's where you can see what lines are assigned to what node in the system. So if I had a TitanNet processor, it would appear here, and I can assign lines to it simply by clicking on the line itself. And like here, I'll go and unassign this one. So see that a line 5 is no longer assigned to any node, so no node has control of it. I wanted to click on it again, and then click on Titan Mobile. Actually, it won't assign it now because there's nothing. If we go back to here, we have to go back to here and then assign it to it. And we see now that it's reassigned. So that's what the DMX overview said. If we had a TitanNet processor here, we could simply assign it to it just by clicking on the line and then clicking on where we needed it to go. And we don't want to assign that again. So then we can go ahead and exit out of DMX settings. And let's see if the chat is playing nice with me and if anyone's got any questions that maybe actually wants to work. Seems to want to work when it wants to work. Looks like Sam is taking care of things as well as Jay. Thanks, Jay. So since I haven't seen any questions that haven't already been answered, we'll keep on keeping on. So let's just talk about the patch menu. Obviously, after I assign my DMX lines, and you can assign just to make it so it's clear. You don't have to assign your DMX lines before you do anything else. You can change those at any time, and it's not like it's something you have to do straight away. You can, like I said, you can do it later if need be. It's kind of handy like that. But let's go ahead and talk about the patch menu. So if we press patch on our consoles, we would then see this menu on our soft keys: dimmers, fixtures, active fixtures, edit fixtures, repatch fixtures, export patch, and patch view. Dimmers is obviously where we can go to patch dimmers. Fixtures is where we can go to patch fixtures. Active fixtures are going to be things like a media server that has an active patch, or as a version 11 plus, it could be capture. Say you've done your all your work in the full version of Capture beforehand, you can use active fixtures to pull that patch in from the full version of Capture instead of having to write it a second time. Kind of handy to not have to do all that work twice. Edit fixtures, where we can go to edit fixtures, and we'll play with that some. Repatch fixtures, just like it sounds, we can repatch fixtures. Export patch, we can export our patch out to a PDF, CSV, XML, and HTML, so you could print it out and keep it for your records, or maybe hand to the shop monkeys to have them pre-patch the rig for you before they send it out. And last one we got is patch view. When we open up patch view, it'll open a window that looks similar to this, and we'll do this here in a second on the interface. The tabs across the top, you have patch fixtures, personality list, RDM, attribute behavior, and fixture mapping. Patch fixtures would be the list of fixtures you already have patched. Personality list would be all the personalities that are in the console, which right now is over 15,000. I believe we might actually be pretty close to 16,000 by now. RDM is where you can go to get, you can deal with RDM enabled fixtures. RDM only works through ArtNet enabled, ArtNet or Shumi ACN nodes that have RDM enabled in them. It does not work through the ports on the back of the console or through a T1 or T-Mobile. Attribute behaviors, where we're going to adjust attributes of the fixtures for things like freeze and limits. We'll talk about that in a little while. And fixture mapping is to deal with fixture exchange, and we'll see that here in a little bit too. So before we move on to the next slide, let's go ahead and go to our Titan One interface and take a look, see at that real quick. So if we hit the patch button here, we see we've got the dimmers, fixtures, active fixtures, edit fixtures, repatch, export patch and patch view. We'll go ahead and click patch view to bring it up. And we'll see here we've got our patch fixtures, our personality list, our RDM, attribute behavior, and fixture mapping. But if we go to our personality list here, we can type in the fixtures we want to look for rather than have to sit there and scroll through this list of thousands and thousands of personalities. We can just type in what we want. So in this case, we want to do just a generic dimmer. So I just type in dimmer, and we'll see that it brings it up to the top for me instead of having to search through it. You also may have noticed that if I clear this out, that generic dimmer has near the top here, and so are Roby BMFLs. That's because I patched those recently on this console. So Titan will remember what you've patched recently, which is kind of handy for, like say you're a rental house, you have all the same fixtures all the time. So instead of having to type in generic dimmer, and go find it every time, I can just click on it here and be ready to patch. Let's talk about some other things we can see in this window here. Manufacturers, obviously be the manufacturer of it, in this case generic. Model is going to be the model, in this case just dimmer. The mode, if it has multiple modes, they'll appear here. In this case, we're just doing dimmer. Then the DMX will be how many channels that particular mode takes, in this case 1. The last column here is capture. You see it has a silver dot in the capture. That means that it will appear in the capture visualizer. If it does not have a silver dot like these fixtures here, it means they won't appear in the capture visualizer. Most fixtures, though this list right here is a pretty not a good example of it, but most fixtures in the library do appear in the capture visualizer. If they don't, you can always put it in a request, and we'll talk about that, how to do that on another day. But you can put in a request and have it added to the library. In this case, we're just going to select this here. And then if we go over to our soft keys here, we'll see we've got quantity, DMX line, address, user number, legend, patch, generic dimmer, and options. We're going to click our options. Actually, we'll go ahead and set our quantity. We're going to set our quantity to 6 today. And we'll set our DMX line to line 3. We'll go ahead and leave it on address 1. User number. User number in Titan can be changed at any time, or you can change it now. If you're a syntax typer, you're the type of guy that likes to have all your dimmers say in the 100s, so you can just type in 101 through 110 at full and select them that way. I'm not a new user numbers guy, so I don't bother changing it any because it doesn't bother me. Legend. You can give a legend to it, so when you patch, it automatically has those legends. In this case, I'm going to make it front cans. And then, so that way when I patch them, they'll have that name on it. I'll go ahead and skip patching for a second. Let's talk about, go to this option menu and talk about it in here. We're going to skip the first 3, the preset palettes, the auto groups, the offset, and we're talking about find fixture real quick. So find fixture is allows you to find fixtures by address. It's great for clubs and theaters. It's fairly unique to Titan. So say that you're doing like club level touring and you get out to that venue where they've, they hand you a patch sheet that was made 3 years ago by a guy who doesn't even work here anymore. So that patch sheet is dubious at best. We can do with find fixtures. You have to have your fixture type and mode correct, but what you can do then is use your wheels down here to dial through the different DMX lines and the different addresses till you find that fixture. If it was a par can like we have here, I would basically take the intensity and turn it to full so you can know which one it was. If it was a moving light, for instance, it would put the pan and tilt at 50-50, set the dimmer to full, get the shutter out of the way, go open up any gobos, any colors, so you can tell that that's the fixture you have selected right now and just patch it straight from there. Super handy. I don't know how many times I used it when I was out doing club level touring that, they either don't even have a patch sheet or the one they have is so completely off that it's just more work than doing this. So we'll turn that fixture off right now. We'll go and hit exit and then hit soft key F here to go ahead and patch those 6 generic dimmers. And we'll see here now that I've got on line 3, starting at address 1, I've got these fixtures patched in. I can see that right up here on the top of my window. And actually patch them again. If I hit exit, and then we're going to go ahead and look for Roby BMFL. Again, it put it at the top because I had patched them recently, but we'll go ahead and just type in BMFL. Oops, help if I could type. And we'll see that it narrows down. There'd be all the different types of Roby BMFLs. If I type in blade, see it narrows down to just the two personality or the two modes that the blade has, mode 1 49 channel or mode 2 the 42 channel. We're going to do the mode 1 and because why not, right? For a quantity, we're going to set our quantity to 12 and we'll set our DMX line to line 1. User number, again, you can change it if you want to. I don't care. Like I said, I don't care about user numbers, so I never do stuff that way. But if you are someone who likes to do it, you're welcome to change it. Legend, go ahead and leave that as is for now. We're going to skip our patch. Let's go ahead and click the options again. And let's talk about the stuff that is on our soft keys now. And we'll switch back to slides for a second. Preset palettes on workspaces, auto groups, and offset. Preset palettes, you can have it on workspaces or disabled. The console, you can have the console with it enabled or on workspaces. You can have the console automatically makes the palettes for you. Some people don't like it. I personally do, because the first thing I want to do is go and make a green palette and a red palette and a blue palette. So I know that the console do it and save me a couple of moments. So I'll usually turn that on. Auto groups, if you don't like to have the console automatically make groups for you, you can turn it off. I usually like to leave that on. Let's talk about the bottom one there, offset. So if you've ever been in a venue or in a house, or maybe this is the way you like to do things, say you've got a 16-channel mover, and actually let's go back to the live view here. Say you've got a 16-channel mover rather than a 49-channel here, and you want to have your first fixtures on 1, your second fixtures on 21, your next one's on 41, 61, 81, 101, so on and so forth, right? So rather than have to individually patch those to put that in, you can automatically put that gap here on the offset. Now, it's a little silly with the Roby BMFL here, since it's 49 channels, but say I wanted to patch it 1, 101, 201, 301, 401. I could change my offset instead of 49, change it to 100. So when I patched, it would automatically put those extra gaps in there for channels. Again, where I think it's a little silly for this, and I personally hate having gaps in my programming, but it can be advantageous in certain situations where you might be doing exchanges later down the line. But I'm going to change mine back to 49. You obviously can't make your offset smaller than the number of channels the fixture takes, because that's not how DMX works. So we'll just leave it at 49. We'll go and hit exit once. And then at the bottom here, we'll go and hit patch Roby BMFL blades. And we'll see now that it patched on line 1. It patched all the fixtures, and you'll see that 12 BMFLs takes up more addressing space than one universe can take. And I see that it automatically fell over to line 2 and put those fixtures for you over on line 2 automatically. Let's see here, where are we going to go next? Let's talk about, we'll take a moment here to see if there's any questions, and then we'll talk about the list of stuff here. It doesn't look like we have any questions. Sorry. Doesn't look like we have any questions that aren't getting answered by our extremely helpful Jay and Sam there. So thank you again, guys, for keeping on top of it. So let's talk about fixture window pages, deleting fixtures, cloning fixtures, repatching fixtures, parking fixtures, fixture exchange, limits, inverts, and freeze. So after we've done patching, we go ahead and exit out. Again, instead of having to hit exit a bunch of time, we can click Avo and exit all the way out of the patch menu. If you're on the Titan 1 interface, actually, let me sorry, I didn't show that. Let me get back into patch here just to show that. We'll do that. So if I was here in patching, rather than hit exit a bunch of times, I can just simply click Avo and exit and take us all the way back out instead of having to exit 2 or 3 times. If you're using the Titan One interface and you need to lock a key on like that to be able to click on the Avo key, Avo and exit at the same time, you simply right click on it. Whoops. Right click on it, and then it'll basically lock that key down while I hit the exit button. So we'll go ahead and close the patch view window, and we'll have our fixtures window up here. So let's talk about fixture window pages. In your context menu, again, if you're using a console, that's going to be just to the left of soft keys B, C, and D right in this area here. But on our T1 interface here, it's going to be on the 4 lines button. We have the pages hide or pages show. I've clicked it so it has pages show. We can see now we have pages of fixtures, so we can organize our layout better. So if I had a large show, maybe I'd put my dimmers on page 1 and my BMFLs on page 2 and my Mac 101s on page 3, and my BMFL washes on page 4 maybe, or whatever I have. I can also have banks. I can have more than those pages if I need, and I can add them in to fill up as need be. But since it's a fairly small show, we're just going to keep on a 1 page. So I'm going to go ahead and rehide that for right now. And we'll talk about that other button in a little while. Sorry, my watch decided to ring. So let's talk about... rather than talking about deleting fixtures, let's skip over to talking about cloning fixtures or copying fixtures. So say that you're out touring and you've got your show files all done up here with 12 BMFLs, and you show up to a venue and they have 14. Well, rather than have to add those in and then go through and add them into every playback and every palette and yada yada yada, just taking hours and hours of work, you can do is just copy or clone the fixture to have another instance of it. So you can simply here, we can just hit copy, and then we can drag select across those last 2 BMFLs, and then tap an empty box next to it here, and you see that now I have 2 more BMFLs added. Now, if I was actually out on a show and I had these 12 BMFLs in a line, I wouldn't necessarily copy my last 2. I might copy my first and my last and then readdress the whole line so that I can have the minimum amount of work for me to touch up in my palettes rather than if I just selected the last 2. Maybe if I have a lot of 1-2 color palettes, so it's like red, blue, or, no color red, no color blue, stuff like that. Maybe I'd pick my second and 11th fixture rather than my first and last, so that it would be less work for me to do it. So what I always like to say is take a moment and think about what's going to be easiest for you, the least amount of rework to add those fixtures in by which fixtures you copy. Say that I was going to add 2 fixtures to my drum riser and all the rest were hung. Maybe I'd copy fixtures 4 and 7 for my drum riser ones, because maybe that's what's going to look best. So just take a moment to think what's going to save you the most amount of work in the long run. It's taking a minute here might save you an hour there. So I always say to think about it. So let's go back to our list here. Let's talk about repatching fixtures. So repatching fixtures, if we go into our context menu again, we'll see we have a button that says DMX address hide. If we click it, it says DMX address show. Now we can see all our DMX addresses that are on our fixtures. I usually keep these off during a show because once I patch the fixture, I don't care what the address is anymore. Some folks like to have their address showing it all the time. If you do, you can leave it on. I usually turn it off, but right now I want to show you the example of, see, after we copy those fixtures, they came up as parked. Now, parked in Avolites parlance is not what other people call park. What they call park, we call freeze. For us, park means that you've taken the fixture's DMX address away, that it can't do anything. So the best way I like to equivalent that is if you take your car and you park it on the curb, right? You take the keys out. What can the car do? Nothing. It doesn't have any keys. What can our fixture do without any DMX address? Nothing. So if we put the keys back in, DMX address, the fixture can now do something again. So let's go ahead and patch these 2 fixtures. So if we go into patch menu, and then click repatch fixtures, we then drag select across these last 2 fixtures, and then give them a DMX line. In this case, we're just going to give them, get them out of the way for now. Put them on line 5, address 1, and we hit repatch, and now see that those 2 fixtures now have a patched on 5.1, which is the universe, and then the address on it, and 5.50, so universe 5, address 50. We can also do here, if we look at our soft keys, we'll see on a soft key A, it says repatch fixtures, or if we click it, it says swap fixture address. So let's say that the guys rigging your fixtures on the truss have maybe swapped to and had them hung up there backwards, and you can't bring the truss back down to change the fixtures or move them. You can simply do swap fixture address. So say that they reversed my first and second BMFLs. With swap fixture address turned on, I can simply click on the first one and then click on the second one, and you'll see that now their addresses are reversed. Or I can just click it and change it back the next day on the next tour when they don't rehang them wrong. The next tour stop. It's kind of handy, super handy for that time that the guys just mix up, or they were standing behind the truss when they were looking at your plot and did them all completely backwards. I've had that happen before, where I meant things to go left to right and they went right to left. So you had to readdress the whole rig, which is really easy to do with swap fixture address. It took me. I probably had a couple dozen fixtures on that rig, and it took me, I don't know, 2 minutes maybe. Pretty easy, and then all my programming worked straight away with no fuss and no muss. So that's how to readdress some fixtures. Let's see what else we got on our list here. Parking fixtures in that same repatch menu. We'll go back and show that again. Say that I wanted to park these two fixtures because I need their DMX addresses to not be there anymore. So you can click on repatch and then select these two fixtures. And then I've got park on my soft keys here on soft key E. I can now set those two fixtures to park. If I reselect them again, I can simply click unpark. It'll take them back to whatever address they were before because Titan will remember it. Kind of handy. And I see Sam said something here about someone who, what? Let's see here. Sorry, what are we? I'm not seeing Juan's question, unfortunately. I see Sam, but I don't see Juan's, what he's saying. Can you tell me what it was, Sam? Oh, what it is, I actually patched the other 6 numbers on top of the others, making a multi-patch is what I did there. And we can tell. Yeah, so let's actually just talk about that real quick. Not like we got nothing but time, right? So multi-patch, if I go back to, see here, let's go back to our patch view. If we look at our patch view here, we'll see on line 3, where I put the dimmers. Whoops, here, let's go to patch fixtures. Go to line 3, we'll see that my user numbers 1 through 6 all have little lightning bolts on them. Same thing as 1 through 6 again. We see we've got line 3, 1 through 6, and then 3 through addresses 7 through 12. So what happened there was when I clicked on it, I patched another 6 dimmers on top of that. So say I wanted 2 park hands to only respond on one handle, I can double patch like that. You can do that with, the only thing you can do that with is dimmers or something like a color scroller. And to get this multi-patch here is where you see those lightning bolts. So if you ever see those lightning bolts, that's what it is. So that's what I've done there. I just didn't talk about it and skipped over it. So thanks for calling me out on it, Juan, and making me explain it. So let's see here. Let's go back to our slide here real quick here. We talked about fixture parking. Let's talk about fixture exchange. So fixture exchange. In Titan, we can exchange fixture types. Let's say that we've been out touring with our BMFLs like we have, and we show up to a new venue this morning, and they've got Mac Vipers instead. Now, you don't have to exchange same kind for same kind. Like, it doesn't have to be BMFL to a Mac Viper. I can exchange a BMFL to a Parcan, to an LED Parcan, or to a wash light, or like a studio color. And obviously, the only things going to carry over are the attributes that the destination fixtures carry, such as, say, we were taking a BMFL and turning it to Parcan. The only thing that's going to work is dimmer, because a Parcan doesn't have colors and gobos and pans and tilts, so it's not going to take those attributes, obviously. If it was a LED Parcan, it would take intensity and colors, since that's what it can do. If we change it to a wash light, it would do the pans and tilts and our colors and intensities, but it wouldn't have any gobos because, well, wash light doesn't have gobos, right? So you don't have to exchange for the same type. It can be exchanged for anything for anything. It's just is obviously the only attributes that are going to carry over. I'm going to show it with a Mac Viper because, well, that makes it fun. So if we go into our patch menu again, we press patch, and then we go to fixtures. I'm going to show the old way of patching. I think that what I showed you guys earlier with using patch view is the faster way to patch, and I think is the better way to patch. But I'm going to show this way, the old school way, just so we can keep our fixtures window open while we do it, rather than bringing up patch view. So if I hit the fixtures and I can select my manufacturer, I can either sit here and go through the list of the previous and next buttons, or I can start typing in the name. In this case, Martin. If I type in MAR, we'll see that it starts narrowing down the list all the way. So I don't even have to type Martin. I can just type in the first three letters and find Martin. And the same thing for the fixture type. We'll pull up Vipers. So I'll just type in VIP, and I say Mac Viper Performance on my soft keys now. So I can click on that, and I'm going to go ahead and use the extended mode. So then if I want to set my quantity address and DMX lines here, I can do it, as well as set the legend if I wanted to. But then we're going to go ahead and drag select across our last two BMFLs. And we'll see that now on our soft keys, it says cancel. Did we fat finger it? Not me to do that. Exchange fixture, use specified address, or use source fixture address. So if it's use specified address, if we put whatever address we put in here would be the one it used. If I'm actually going to do the last four of my BMFLs. If I said use source fixture addresses, use the same address of the BMFLs that I had before. So in this case, we'd put it at 2.1 and line 2 address 1, line 2 address 50, line 5 1, line 5 50. So we'll go ahead and use our source fixture address and go ahead and hit soft key B exchange. We'll now see that those Mac Vipers, or those BMFLs, are now Mac Vipers. So all of our programming is going to work straight away for the most part. Exchange works extremely well. It's not often that I have to go in and muck about with other stuff. Sometimes, maybe muck about with the positions a little bit, because they're, each fixture pan and tilt is slightly different. So I might have to do that, but you have to do that almost every time you rehang a rig anyway, so it's not that big a deal. We also have what's called exchange mapping. So if we exit all the way out of our patch here, and then we go ahead and hit patch, and then patch view, and then we click on the exchange mapping tab. We'll see here that on our left half of the window, we've got our source fixture, in this case, the BMFL blade, and our destination fixture, in this case, the Mac Viper Performance. And then we've got a list of all our attributes, and on each different fixture type here. You see the ones that are kind of in the gold color, for lack of a better, I'd call that gold. Those means that either the source fixture or the destination fixture does not contain an equivalent attribute. So like in this case, though the Roby has a pan and tilt speed channel, the Viper does not. And apparently the Viper has an effect channel, but an effect rotation, but it doesn't have an equivalent, at least the software doesn't feel there's an equivalent between the two. But let's say that Titan does a pretty good job of exchange mapping by itself. You don't have to muck about in here. But let's say that in my Roby BMFL blades here on Gobo 1, no, I cannot find it. Oh, there it is. Gobo Wheel 1. In Gobo 1, I've got a nice crosshatch. And on a Mac Viper, the equivalent crosshatch is on Gobo 3 and the Global 3 slot instead of the Gobo 1 slot. So what I can do is actually still has a mapping in it from last time, because Titan is really nice and remembers that. So let me change this real quick here, just so it's back to normal. So see here, Gobo 1 on our BMFL comes up on Gobo 1 of our Mac Viper. say that it actually is in Gobo slot 3 is the more equivalent crosshatch in that fixture. These are just random. I don't know them off the top of my head. But say so that if I wanted any of my programming, whether it would be a palette or something I programmed without a palette, to always come up in that same looking crosshatch, I go and click on where it says Gobo 1 here, and then click on Gobo 3 here, and then hit apply and confirm. And now anything I had, any palette, again, any palettes, any programming I had that used Gobo 1 in our original fixtures will now come up in Gobo 3 of our exchanged out fixtures. And someone asked earlier on the stream, and I missed their question but saw it later. Yes, you can go between different Gobo wheels. So if I was to go to Gobo wheel 2, for instance, and if I scroll down here on it, so I've got this is Gobo wheel 2, I believe. Where is it on this one? How's this one got it organized? Why do you keep doing that to me? Oh, because it's already got it all mapped for me. But yes, you can map different Gobo wheels to different from Gobo wheel 1 to Gobo wheel 2 easily. Yes, here we are. So yeah, those were the right ones. Scrolling too fast. So if I wanted Gobo wheel 2's Gobo 3, I wanted it to be the equivalent of Gobo. So I wanted it to come up as Gobo 5 on our destination fixture. I simply click on it, again, hit apply, and then confirm. So any programming that was on Gobo 2, Gobo wheel 2, Gobo 2 is not going to come up on Gobo 5 of our single Gobo wheeled Mac Viper performance here. So again, usually I don't have to muck about in here. About the only time I've messed about in fixture exchange is for gobos and sometimes color wheels. I don't use color wheel often, but sometimes you get stuck with a color wheel and with the personality thinks the colors are is either slightly off or maybe someone had rearranged the fixture, the colors in their particular fixtures or whatever. So I've used that to remap color wheels to solve a problem. So if we go back to our slide real quick, any questions on fixture exchange where we are so far? Then I need to take a sip. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any particular questions right now. Hopefully, if they do, Sam and Jay are still all over it since they've been taking care of me so far. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about limits, inverts, and freeze. So if we switch back to our Titan 1 interface here, we go ahead and exit out of this menu, and then Avo exit out of the patch menu that we were in. And actually, I don't know why I did that. We can just pull it up. We can open up patch view again. So we go to patch view, and we go to our attribute behavior. And then you can narrow down which fixtures you want to mess about with. In this case, we're going to go to our VMFLs and line 1, since that's where they all are. And we see here that we can just do our ones that are on line 1. If we had on more than one line, we can narrow it down that way to help us find which fixtures we want to mess with. So in your context menu, again, if you're on a console, it's on screen. It's going to be just about here to the left of the soft keys B, C, and D. On the Titan 1 and Sapphire, it's going to be, or Titan Go, sorry, it's going to be on the 4 lines button. If you click on that, see here we've got patch, exchange, curve, upper limit, lower limit, invert, freeze, and offset. Curve, we'll talk about that for a quick moment. Curve, you can change the way the curve of a attribute behaves. By default, everything in Titan is going to be a linear curve. So if you've drawn a box you've drawn it on a graph, it's going to be a 45-degree angle straight from 0 to 100. There are other curves you can mess about with. You can find what they exactly look like in the manual. I'm not really going to go into it here because it's really hard to show without a live fixture and live in front of everybody to really show. But you can change the curve if you need to. Most time I've only messed about with that would be mixing like old school dimmers with different brands. Sometimes they got a different curve, and I've changed the dimming curve to make them look behave more alike. And then let's talk about upper limits and lower limits. Let's say that in our BMFLs here, I got a screen to the stage left, and I don't want my movers to pan onto that screen. I can set a limit, upper limit, lower limit, depending on which direction that fixture pans, and have it not blast that screen by setting a limit to not go past it, or the opposite direction if it was on stage right, same difference. Or say that a lower limit. So you've got a house of worship or a nightclub that has all the house lights are controlled by the console. What you do is set a lower limit of say 5%, so that no matter what you do, the lights won't dim below 5%. So even if you slap the Grandmaster to 0, the whole house is going to go completely dark, which is in a house of worship wouldn't be a good thing. Or in a nightclub, you don't want the physical bar itself to go dark, because that's a good way to not have a very happy owner with you. Upper limit, same difference, except for being upper. Say that you've got a younger tech working for you who can't keep his fingers off the strobe buttons. Maybe set an upper limit on your strobe so that it's maybe 80%, so he doesn't blast the whole club out because he's a little strobe happy. It's a good way to handle that. Another thing I've also used upper limits for is there's a big show in Denver I do called the National Western Stock Show, and I have some blinders in that are kind of older, have 4596 lamps in them, so they're 250 watt, 28 volt, so they're basically like ACLs, but in par 38s. So what I do on those is that they only have a 25-hour lamp life. So, I was changing, in a month-long show, I'm changing these things out, every other week. So what I did is I put an upper limit of 90% on them, and I can tell they're not at full, but probably no one else can. And took my lamp life and shoved it through the roof. So I'm only changing them out once a year. In a month long show. So that's, was really helpful. So say maybe you're doing a small community theater and they're still using par cans and Lecos. Maybe you can, put a little bit of a limiter on their lights to where you can maybe help save them a couple bucks by making their fixtures last longer. It's an idea, just another thing you can do with an upper limit. So that's it on limits. The other things we have in here, inverts. Let's talk about invert for a second. Invert would be you can have an inverted channel to have it behave in the opposite way that it currently does. Say that in our BMFLs, we wanted our pan to go the opposite way that it does, or the tilt to go the opposite way that it was. I could simply make sure I'm on invert in my context menu, and then click on the pan column or an individual fixture if I wanted to do just a single one, and turn the invert on, or click on it again and turn it back off. Same thing with tilt. 99% of the time I've ever used inverts, it's going to be on pan or tilt, except for there's a popular, quote unquote, popular brand of knockoff Sharpie out there that uses the same personality as a real Sharpie, but it has the control channel is messed up so that when you locate your fixtures, they lamp off. I've had this phone call a few times, but what it is, you take the control channel and invert it, problem goes away. So another thing you use an invert on, I think the only other thing I've really ever used an invert on was be a zoom, where I wanted it to be the opposite it was. And one time I had some China pars that for some reason 0% was full brightness and 100% was no brightness. I don't know why it was reversed like that, but I just inverted the channels and it behaved how I expected it to. The other thing we have in here, the other two things we have is freeze and offset. Let's talk about freeze for a minute. Freeze, just like I said earlier, is what other guys call park. You can be freeze, just like it sounds, you can freeze the channel so you can lock it at that value forever and ever until you go back and change it. You restart the console, it'll still be frozen at that. If it's a dimmer and you froze it at 100%, you can drop the Grandmaster. It's going to stay on at 100%. So say that you're doing like a corpo show and the fire marshal comes in and goes, that doorway over there is too dark. Well, take one of your fixtures, point it at the doorway, lock the intensity of the pan and tilt, and then that doorway is going to say better lit up so the fire marshal can be happy. Let it change colors and gobos because he didn't say that part. He said it had to be brighter, right? So what we can, or say that you wanted to, other things I've used freezes for is say that I've got some moving lights and one of my color flags in one of my stage left one goes out. I'll freeze the the one in the stage right side so that they might both be the wrong color, but at least they're both the wrong color, right? So at least they look the same to keep symmetry, because I'm kind of a symmetrical guy. That's how I like things to go. So if we wanted to freeze the channel, we can simply select which attribute or which fixture we wanted. Say we wanted to freeze the CTO of this particular fixture there. We can simply click on it and then click freeze, and then I'll see that freeze is on. And again, if we want to turn it back off, we can simply click it and unfreeze it. If you wanted to freeze a whole fixture rather than go through all the attributes, which in a BMFL would take for absolute ever, what we do is we go to close the patch view window here. We can simply go into edit fixture on our soft keys. We're in the patch menu, and then select which fixtures we want to muck about with. And then we can go to freeze fixture or attribute and freeze fixture. We can freeze the entire fixture. So now the entire fixture is frozen instead of just individual attributes. It's a lot faster to do it that way. Or, select it again and unfreeze it. Do the same thing to unfreeze all of them. We'll go back to our patch view again. We'll look up in here and we'll talk about offsets. So what offset is say that you normally have your fixtures hung in one orientation, and say that you have it so that the pan and tilt, when it's at 50-50, the fixture pans, tilts up and down stage, right? But then when they hung your fixtures, they hung them sideways so that it pans and tilts, or when you have it tilt from 50-50, it goes from stage left to stage right. What you do with offset is just put in a change the offset of the fixtures. Rather than have to fix all of your fixtures, you can just fix the offset. This is one of the times I think kind of wish I had a camera, because it's so much easier to show by waving my hands around than it is just explaining by saying it. So we can have it actually here. Let's. Well, I don't have capture set up yet, so we can go in there and automatically put that offset in to fix it. So you take a 540-degree tilting or panning fixtures, it's going to be 16.6 to move it 90 degrees. So if I had to hang the fixture sideways, I could just fix it that way very quickly rather than have to go through and touch up on my palettes. It'd be automatically fixed for me. I hope that's making sense to everybody. Let's see if I can see anything in the chat here. Not that it's showing me, because Facebook is not very nice to me today. So I hope that everybody's getting it, or Sam and Jay have sorted you out if not. Let's see here. What else are we going to talk about today? Edit fixture, edit personality, export patch, and the DMX output window. Let's talk about. We touched on the edit fixture menu, but we'll talk about it a little bit more. So we'll go back to our Titan 1 here. If we were to, we'll go ahead and select some of these Mac Vipers here, and we'll go into our edit fixture menu. And here's, after you click edit fixture, you'll see you have edit personality, update personality, swap pan tilt, invert attribute, freeze fixture or attribute, set curves, limits, offsets, and reset behavior. So say that I had to put a whole bunch of offsets and a whole bunch of silly stuff yesterday to make the show work, and I just want to reset it all to there. I can simply select the fixtures and hit reset behavior and set everything back to normal, or get through it, not through the patch view, just through the menu here. I was talking about the top three here: edit personality, update personality, and swap pan and tilt. Swap pan and tilt, just like it sounds, say you hung your fixtures quote unquote sideways, so it's like on a vertical truss. You can have the tilt work like the pan of the rest of fixtures, and its pan work like the tilt on the rest of fixtures, so they all kind of move in the same manner. Can be pretty helpful when you're, as I said, when you've hung fixtures sideways like that. Update personality. When you update the personalities of a console or the PC suite for that matter, it does not automatically update your show file. This is a safety valve, so that say that you've been using a bug in a personality to your advantage, you'd be kind of torqued off if you plugged your show file into a console and it just automatically updated the personality for you and borked all your programming up. So it's a safety valve to do it there. Even if you click on it here, it's not going to have any updates, because obviously we just patched these fixtures, so there's nothing to update. We have the top one here. We have the edit personality. The console has the full personality. PC Suite or a console have the full personality builder in them, not like some other brands that give you a nerfed version. We give you the full version. It's the same thing that the boys at the factory use to make personalities. So if we clicked on that, we select which one we want to edit. We'll click on our our BMFL, and we'll give it a second to open up here. And you'll see that here we can go through and edit our personality if we needed to on show site. I very, very, very rarely need to muck about in a personality. It's usually a pretty terrible day already at that point. But that's how you can get to it and make any changes you need to do and save it and add it to your show file. But we're going to go ahead and exit out of that for now since we don't need to do that. What else we have in here on our, that is everything in this menu. So if we go and patch back here again, let's talk about, so we're going to talk about export patch. So if we were to click export patch here, see it gives the option of exporting to an HTML, PDF, CSV, or XML. We could choose which one we wanted, and it would export it automatically. If it's a PC suite, it'll automatically export it to your documents folder in Windows, Titan, reports, in this case, migrate show, and then a timestamp on it. And we can see that if I open it up, it will show everything I have patched on this show file. Pretty handy, kind of nice to keep your records, or like I said, hand to the shop monkeys to have them pre-do it or send your patch off to a festival or something along those lines if need be. And let's see here, last thing on this particular list is the DMX output window. If we do open workspace window and then we go to DMX, see it opens up workspace window here. Make it big so we can see it. We can see here our addresses and what the output is specifically is what specific output they are. So you can see what's going on with all things in your console. So we can select all fixtures and then narrow it down by line to know what is where and see what the actual output on them is. What is in the niftiness in here? And there's nothing in the context menu for this. Not much I have to say about the DMX window other than it exists. It's handy if you need to find out what's coming out on what the actual output is on a particular channel or what actual attribute is on said channel, so you can easily figure it out. Oops, was I on the wrong one the whole time during that again? Did I do that again? Just in case I did, the DMX window, Workspace window DMX, and you can see here, just in case I had it on the wrong one again, since I like to do that, we can see that we can narrow down by fixture type if we want, and address or line, so you narrow down to find your stuff more quickly. You can see that here we have no dimmers on lines 1, 2, or 5, but we do on 3, and we see our dimmers there. Or you can go to our Mac Vipers on line 5 here, and we see that the shutter's got an output of 35, excuse me, and our color is 187, yada, 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 so forth. We can see that the actual output is per channel. Hope that makes sense since I mucked that up again. But that is everything I have planned for today's stream. I'll try to see if we can get anything come up for me again. And it doesn't look like I'm actually getting any questions coming through. Hopefully Sam's been able to take care of all you guys. And I apologize for not being able to answer them myself because, well, it's being a pain in my butt. But we'll hopefully see you guys again tomorrow. We'll do 4 p.m. Eastern time again. And tomorrow the plan is to go over, let me pull up my email here. Tomorrow the plan is to go over capture and the linking with the internal, doing internal and basic linking to the full version of capture. So we'll have a pretty good fun tomorrow with all that. So again, thank you all for joining us and hope to see you guys again tomorrow. Bye.